Hey y'all, CCJ. I am trying to finish this book this week, and as such, I want to give you guys a little more information. Last week, when I filmed the video about, we got to talk about this book, and I was telling you guys a few pertinent details, such as the fact that if this is going to be a 2-book series with a bit of a cliffhanger, not a bit of a cliffhanger, it's a definite cliffhanger with with a cliffhanger in, to end book one. I had several of you reach out to ask me, hey, what else do I need to read in order to enjoy this book? My answer to that is that I don't think that there is anything that you absolutely have to read before you read No Longer Afraid. I feel like I've done, even with this story, even with some of the story elements having been introduced in other projects, really important story elements introduced in other projects, I think that there is enough in the way of context clues that you will be able to pick it up and understand what's happening, understand the world that is being built here. You'll understand what's going on. But if you are not familiar, if you are not pretty intimately familiar with my work, there may be places where you have a question and that question does not get answered as extensively as you may like, because this book is not about the characters that more heavily focus on those elements. And the reason that I am talking in a bit of circles, I guess, or not even in circles, I really would like to not give spoilers, because I know some of you guys really don't like that. And so I try to be really careful of it. But there are definitely elements that, like I said, are introduced in other titles that if you are one of those type of people who you want to know everything, you want to know all the details, you want to know where this character comes from, what their story is, etc., there is a list of titles that you will want to potentially explore before, but also possibly just explore after reading No Longer Afraid. And I'm going to go with those. So No Longer Afraid is actually the introduction of two different worlds. The Predators Motorcycle Club world, which was just introduced in my Vegas Night series last year. And we also have the world of the Garden and the Roses, which is a world that I've actually been writing in since 2017. So the first that you will potentially want to have read is going to be that last book in the Vegas Night series, maybe one more time, because that book is the introduction of Blue, who is the president of the Predators Motorcycle Club. We actually get a small mention of Tati in that book as well. Even though that's the first one I'm recommending, I actually think it's the least important in terms of the books that I'm going to tell you about. Blue is pretty prominent in this book, but I don't think there's necessarily any, in terms of information about the world, I don't think that I introduce much in that book that would change anything for you going into No Longer Afraid. And I actually did that on purpose because I knew that I was going to be writing that series, and I didn't want to box myself into too much, even though that went how it went. I didn't want to box myself into too much before I actually started writing that series. So there's not a ton of information there, but if you're interested, you'll want to read. Now, the other world, the world of the Garden and the Roses, that's where things get a whole lot more complicated. And that's where, if there was anything that I say that you need to read before you read No Longer Afraid, that book is going to be Deuces Wild. That book is the book of Alicia and Cree. You first meet Alicia, also known as Ace. She is Kingston Whitfield's bodyguard in my title, Ante Up, which is the first book in the High Stakes series. When we meet Alicia in Ante Up, she has this facade of unshakable, nothing touches her. She is just tough through and through and through. And then we get to her story and we find out just how so when you write books about a character where they are not the main character, you see them how the main characters see them. And then when you get to their book, once you're actually in their head and you're actually getting to know them, not getting to know how someone else views them, but getting to know them, you discover that you're meeting someone entirely different from what they seem like, kind of on that surface level. Or you should. In my opinion, you should. And it's actually something that I think leads to a bit of frustration for my readers. So just as a note, as you're reading through my catalog, like if you're, kind of early in my catalog, keep in mind that I like for my characters to be their own people. So just because you met them one way in someone else's book does not mean that they are going to be exactly that way in their book, because all you saw was how someone else saw them. You have not met them yet until you read their book. But anyway, we meet Alicia, and she goes on this whole journey through her book where we find out where she came from, what created her, essentially, and all of this really intense kind of adventure, for lack of a better word, that she goes on. And that is where we come into the understanding of what the garden is, where this comes from, and these very specific tattoos that people who are from the garden have. From there, that spins off into the Roses series that I do not think that you need to read before you read No Longer Afraid. Do I think that there's some interesting supplemental information there? Absolutely. You actually meet some of the characters from that Roses series in this book. But again, I do not think that there is any necessary information that happens in those books that you need to read them before. You'll probably want to go back and read them after. You'll probably be interested to read them afterwards, but I don't think that you need to read them before. So really, that's it. In order to get the most understanding of the world that I'm thrusting you into in No Longer Afraid, you'll want to read Deuces Wild. If you care to read about Blue, who is the president of the Motorcycle Club, you'll want to read Maybe One More Time. If you want even further supplemental information, you can read the Roses series. And really, we meet Kingston Whitfield, and Kingston has not necessarily a huge part, but Kingston does have some role in the book. And so you might want to read Ante Up. I don't think it's a necessary, addition to your TBR, but I think it's a fabulous book. And so if you just want something to read, by all means, pick it up. But yeah, I don't think you need it. So the only thing that I would say, like, if you need to be absolutely sure of everything that's going on, you'll want to read Deuces Wild. Other than that, just go into it blind. I would actually send you into it blind. If you're someone who you like the mystery, you like all of that, I would send you into it blind. Like, be confused. It's okay. You're going to get those answers as the book goes along. You're going to get answers for pretty much everything you might want to know. The only things that you won't get answers to is because it's a 2-part series, and so you would get the other answers in the other part of the book. But there may be something for you to do in between the 2 books. Read the first book and then go back and read, the other supplementals, and then maybe by the time you're done, well, not some of y'all read real fast, so I won't say maybe by the time you're done, the other book will be out, but it'll definitely give you something to read in the meantime. So there's that. If you guys have any other questions about this series, please feel free to let me know. I'm open to answering pretty much anything about the books, about the series. So yeah, just let me know. And as always, thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll holla. Bye.